Welcome to Module 1, Roots of the Refugee Crisis, Understanding Displacement. Understanding why people become refugees begins with examining the root causes of displacement. Forced migration is rarely a choice. It is most often a desperate response to conflict, persecution, or disaster. Around the world, millions are uprooted not because they want to leave, but because remaining in their home puts their lives, rights, or dignity at risk. This module explores the fundamental forces behind the global refugee crisis: armed conflict, political repression, economic collapse, environmental degradation, and more. When asked the critical question, what drives people to flee everything they know in search of safety? In this module, you'll learn about the distinction between voluntary migration and forced displacement. While voluntary migration occurs when someone chooses to move for better opportunities, forced displacement happens when people are compelled to leave due to life-threatening circumstances. This distinction is crucial because it affects the legal protections available to refugees and plays a major role in shaping public opinion and policy making. Refugees, in the truest sense of the word, are not just people looking for better opportunities. They are people who flee to survive. This module also takes you on a historical journey. Forced displacement is not a modern phenomenon. From the aftermath of World War II to the Rwandan genocide and the Palestinian Nakba, history shows that violence and persecution have uprooted millions for generations. Understanding these past events helps contextualize today's refugee crisis as part of a much larger pattern of global injustice and human suffering. As you progress through the module, you'll learn about the various groups that are affected by displacement, including refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced persons, IDPs, migrants, and stateless individuals. Each group is treated differently under international law, and the protections they receive vary. For instance, refugees, as defined by the 1951 Refugee Convention, are granted legal protections, while individuals fleeing environmental disasters, often referred to as climate refugees, and they are not recognized as refugees under current international law. This gap leaves many people without any legal protection, highlighting the need for reform in international law to address the changing nature of displacement. You'll also learn about the major causes of displacement in today's world. Armed conflicts, like those in Syria, Sudan, Ukraine, and Gaza, have forced millions to flee their homes, seeking safety in neighboring countries or beyond. Political repression, as seen in countries like Myanmar and Venezuela, drives people to escape in search of a better life. Economic instability, poverty, and a breakdown in essential public services further exacerbate the situation, leaving people with no choice but to flee. A growing factor contributing to forced displacement is climate change. Rising sea levels, extreme weather patterns, and natural disasters such as floods and droughts are making many areas uninhabitable. Yet, people displaced by environmental factors often don't receive the same legal protections as other displaced individuals, leaving them invisible in the eyes of international law. As you approach the end of this module, we will touch on statelessness. Stateless individuals, people who do not belong to any country, often find themselves in legal limbo, unable to access basic human rights such as healthcare, education, and legal employment. Their lack of legal recognition makes them especially vulnerable and marginalized, and it's a critical issue that advocacy must address. By the end of this module, you will have a comprehensive understanding of the complex political, environmental, legal, and historical factors that contribute to forced displacement. You will also be equipped with the knowledge to go beyond the headlines, to speak up, take action, and advocate for the rights of the people who are often forgotten. Let's begin this journey together.
What is forced displacement? Forced displacement refers to the involuntary movement of people who are compelled to leave their homes due to serious threats such as armed conflict, persecution, widespread violence, human rights violations, or disasters. Unlike voluntary migration, where individuals move by choice, often for better opportunities, forced displacement happens when people have no choice at all. Their lives, safety, or basic dignity are under threat, and the only option is to flee. This displacement can be triggered by many different factors. Armed conflicts and war zones, like those in Syria, Ukraine, or Sudan, force civilians to run for their lives, often under attack. Persecution based on religion, ethnicity, gender, political beliefs, or sexual orientation also drives people from their homes. In recent years, climate change has emerged as a growing cause. Rising sea levels, floods, droughts, and extreme weather events destroy homes, farmland, and entire ways of life. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, reported that as of 2024, over 114 million people worldwide are forcibly displaced. This includes refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced persons, and stateless individuals. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent people whose lives have been upended, often overnight, due to circumstances beyond their control. Forced displacement may be temporary, but for many, it becomes a long-term or even permanent state. Refugees often spend years, even decades, in camps or under uncertain legal status. Families are separated, children are left without education, and basic rights are often out of reach. In this section, we will explore the legal classifications that determine how displaced people are treated and protected. Terms like refugee, asylum seeker, and internally displaced person. Understanding these distinctions is essential for effective advocacy and humanitarian response.
Historical evolution of displacement. To fully understand forced displacement today, it's essential to look at its historical roots. Forced displacement is not a new phenomenon. It has shaped human history across every continent. What has changed over time is the scale, complexity, and global impact. In ancient times, wars and imperial conquests routinely displaced populations. The forced relocation of communities under empires like the Roman or Ottoman often served political or economic goals. People were moved to weaken rivals, populate colonies, or expand trade routes. These early forms of displacement laid the foundation for the political use of migration and control of populations. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we witness some of the largest forced displacements in modern history. During World War II, more than 60 million people were uprooted due to Nazi occupation, genocidal policies, and the redrawing of national borders. Holocaust survivors, Japanese Americans interned in the US, and millions of others experienced forced migration on an unprecedented scale. In 1947, the partition of British India into India and Pakistan led to one of the largest and most traumatic mass migrations in human history. Over 14 million people were displaced based on religious identity, and communal violence claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. The aftermath of colonialism, Cold War, proxy wars, and decolonization in Africa and Asia also triggered waves of forced migration. Civil wars, famines, and genocides, such as in Rwanda and Cambodia, became defining humanitarian crises of the late 20th century. These events laid the groundwork for the development of international legal protections. The 1951 Refugee Convention and the creation of the UNHCR were direct responses to these global crises, providing for the first time a legal definition of refugee and outlining the obligations of states toward displaced populations. Today, the drivers of forced displacement are more interconnected than ever. Conflicts, political instability, environmental degradation, and economic collapse often overlap. As we study the present, we must remember that each new crisis is part of a long historical continuum of human movement, survival, and adaptation. On this slide, you'll see a visual timeline tracing key events in the history of forced displacement. These historical examples are not just relics of the past, they inform how we understand, respond to, and prevent displacement today.